Hey guys, tonight we slip way back into a world where your morning alarm isn't a ringtone, but the faint moo of a hungry cow and the musty scent of damp thatch above your head. Your back hurts, the floor is mud, and something bit your ankle in the night. The cheese is your only income, and half the village thinks your cellar is cursed. You're a cheesemaker in the Bronze Age. That's right, today's journey will walk you through the clumpy, sticky, occasionally rancid world of prehistoric dairy. You'll shape curds by hand, dodge goat horns before breakfast, and maybe barter your smelliest wheel for an axe chipped out of volcanic glass. But before you glamorize it, a quick reality check. You probably won't survive this. Your hut, like most in the village, is built from mud brick and timber, capped with a thatch roof. It leaks in the rain and sweats in the sun. Your besto, Hera, eyes you with suspicion. She remembers yesterday's rough milking. You have too, an old matron named Dolma and her calf who still hasn't figured out which end is food and which is not. Dolma snorts and swishes her tail as you approach with your wooden pail. She knows the drill but doesn't have to like it. She also remembers the time you accidentally sat on her tail. The sun is barely a blush on the horizon, but the day's already in motion. Your neighbor passes by with a reed basket full of fish probably smoked overnight. It's dented and uneven, but it holds heat like a charm and has only leaked twice. She nods at you and you nod back, both too tired for words. The goats bleat outside and the village rooster finally decides to announce the obvious. Morning has fully arrived. It's not confirmed, but your cracked knuckles are desperate enough to consider it. It keeps the cows calm and your hands steady. Warm milk foams into the bucket, steam rising like breath. You swat away a fly with your elbow. You make a mental note to check your grain pot. Again, you feed them a few dry twigs, blow gently, and coax a small flame back to life. The fire crackles and sputters like it too, resents being awake. Bronze Age life doesn't leave much room for leisure. No scrolls, no novels, no podcasts in your ears, just chores, sounds, and the constant tick of necessity. Cheese doesn't make itself. You hang your bronze pot from a hook above the flame, pour in the milk, and begin to stir. Another joke of the Bronze Age, where there's milk, there's a swarm of opportunists. Milking her is like trying to squeeze a wet towel wrapped around an elbow. She kicks every time. You've learned to dodge. The answer changes depending on the region and who you ask. But one thing is clear, this job matters. Cheese isn't just food. It's trade, status, and insurance for when the barley fails. But it's home. And today, as with every day, begins with the same muddy trudge toward the pen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Outside, the mist clings low over the village paths. Chickens peck sleepily at the ground. You can hear a baby wailing 2 huts down and the rhythmic thok-thok of someone splitting firewood. It's already stained beyond saving. Somewhere in the world, maybe someone has invented soap. You haven't. Your joints remind you that sleeping on woven mats over packed dirt is less than ideal. And the bite in the air says it's going to be another misty morning. You sit up, stretch your aching back, and squint toward the dying hearth. The embers glow a dull orange, a meager warmth in the otherwise cool hut. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where you all are listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun, not by choice, never by choice. Around you, the smells of wood smoke, goatskin, and sour milk mix into a familiar cocktail. You grab a leather sling bag and a clay cup and duck under the low doorway. The goat pen stinks. Of course it does. Goats were probably invented to keep Bronze Age cheesemakers humble. The cows are less dramatic, but still far from cooperative. As you milk, you hum softly a tune you don't remember learning, probably passed down from your mother. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age dairying was gendered work. Were you, as a man, doing this out of necessity, or were you a woman in a matrilineal household? You finish up, flex your sore fingers, and wipe the milk spatters on your tunic. With the fresh milk in tow, you trudge back toward the hut. Back inside, you place the milk next to the hearth, where the embers still linger. The pot itself is a treasure. You bartered for it last year with a trader who smelled like honey and wore a necklace of bear claws. You sit beside the hearth, cradling a cup of warm whey, letting the heat soak into your knees. A quirky tidbit for you. Some archaeologists believe Bronze Age people used cow dung as a moisturizer. The fire pops. Somewhere in the hut's corner, a mouse scurries. It's only been an hour since sunrise, and you're already on your third task. Bronze Age life doesn't leave much room for leisure. No scrolls, no novels, no podcasts in your ears, just chores, sounds, and the constant tick of necessity. Cheese doesn't make itself. You duck back outside with your pail in hand, half full of fresh milk and still warm from the cow. The path between your hut and the animal enclosure is nothing more than a muddy streak through packed earth, scattered with straw and the occasional questionable footprint. The goats have wandered again. Of course they have. Hera, your favorite troublemaker, is halfway onto a neighbor's firewood pile. You cluck your tongue and she freezes, pretending not to hear. Not because you're slow though your hands are stiff this morning, but because each animal has their quirks. Hera tends to kick after 5 seconds. Dolma sometimes stops mid-flow, looking off into the distance like she's solving a riddle. Your back protest. The pail is nearly full now, though sweet, frothy milk with a grassy scent, still faintly steaming in the cool morning air. One of the younger goats, brand new to the process, simply panics and bolts as soon as you approach. You just sit there, hand on forehead, as the goat resumes chewing her cud like nothing happened. Somewhere behind you, a dog barks. Probably laughing. Dolma flicks her tail lazily and regards you with the look of a queen forced to tolerate peasants. You mutter something very unsacred under your breath and get back to it. No time for sulking in the Bronze Age. Smoke curls from neighboring huts. A few children dart by, carrying reeds and giggling. You give them a nod and they wave one even shouts, "Is there cheese today?" The hearth is crackling properly now, the bronze pot already warm. You pour in the fresh milk, giving the pot a careful stir with a wooden paddle carved from elderwood. It smells faintly of thyme, your small flavoring trick, though most people wouldn't notice. The smell is comforting sweet milk mingling with wood smoke and the earthy scent of last night's ashes. A shallow bronze pan with a crack that you sealed using melted pitch. A wooden ladle, worn smooth by years of stirring. A reed strainer basket that leaks slightly in one corner. You repair things when you can, barter when you must, and invent when desperate. You take a sip of leftover whey and stare into the flames. Imagine explaining that to the gods. No, I didn't bring gold, but here's a very mature cheddar. It's not glamorous work. It's not even very clean, but it's yours. You respond with a grumble, which they take as a yes. Invisible at first, but soon enough the milk will split, thickening into curds and releasing whey. You know the signs. You've seen this dance 1,000 times. It's still a little bit magic every time. You tie her loosely to the feeding post and begin the milking process. She knows this routine. You know this routine. The calf does not. Goats are good at that. Another nudges the thatch roofing of your tool shed, nibbling at the dried herbs you've hung to keep pests away. The milk is just starting to shimmer, the surface trembling ever so slightly. Perfect. It's tedious, but if you don't, the curds will pick up every fleck of dirt and hair, and no one wants gritty cheese. You swat it away gently with your elbow, muttering half-affectionate curses. Were they cheese scientists or just extremely lucky farmers? The jury's still out. You've tried separating them, but the calf screams like it's being flayed alive and the whole village complains. This is the compromise. But they suggest dairying was both common and surprisingly widespread by the late Bronze Age. Even settlements without clear animal pens had remnants of cheese strainers, implying milk went somewhere and it wasn't just for drinking. You glance at the small linen pouch of fig sap on the shelf, a natural coagulant. Some people use thistle, others experiment with animal rennet scraped from calf stomachs. You tried that once. Once was enough. Fig sap, while slow, is gentler on the flavor, and it's not as gross to touch. You sigh, trudge over, and start herding them back into their pen with a long stick and your best, "Dawn, make me thrill my sandal face." The cows, thankfully, are where you left them. It bumbles around, bumping into your side, attempting to sneak milk directly from the source. Milking takes a long time. Here's a historical tidbit. Archaeologists have uncovered early milking stools in sites across Central Europe, some little more than flat rocks. You're working with no stool though, just a squat position and a dream. Your knees crack. And then, of course, Hera kicks. The pail tips and half the milk arcs into the mud like a slow-motion tragedy. You don't even yell anymore. You gather what's left and set it aside before dealing with cleanup. That's one cheese wheel lost before breakfast. By now, the sun has climbed above the trees, its light bleeding gold through the mist. Once the goats are secured again, you turn to cleaning the teats with a bit of wool dipped in warm water. You haul your remaining pail back into the hut. This is where the transformation begins, from milk to magic. Or curds, at least. And yes, historians still argue whether Bronze Age people truly understood fermentation or were simply repeating trial and error methods passed down across generations. But you've made enough mistakes to develop a feel for it. Another goat bleats outside. Probably mad she didn't get a second breakfast. You ignore her. You sit down beside the fire, rocking slightly, still stirring. Your tools are few but precious. Fun aside, in some Mediterranean Bronze Age communities, cheese was so valuable it was buried with the dead. You grin to yourself and poke the fire, adjusting the pot. You sprinkle in the fake sap. Just a few drops. It smells faintly bitter, invisible at first, but soon enough the milk will split, thickening into curds and releasing whey. You know the signs. You've seen this dance 1,000 times. It's still a little bit magic every time. You leave the milk to rest while you rinse your hands in a shallow clay bowl. The water is cold, cloudy, and smells faintly of ash from the hearth, but it gets the job done. You dry your hands on your tunic because honestly, what else are clothes for in the Bronze Age? The milk in the bronze pot has changed. This is how you release the whey. The sharper your cuts, the more efficiently the moisture drains. It's slow work, but you don't mind. There's something satisfying about watching the transformation. You scoop them gently into a cloth laid inside a large basket, one you wove yourself from reeds last winter, your fingers going numb beside the fire. The basket is slightly warped, but it does the job. It's like sculpting a meal out of science and patience. You stretch your legs out, crack your neck, and lean back against the hot wall. Your teeth ache slightly, one of your molars is cracked, and you're trying not to think about it. Dentistry at this point in history involves prayers and maybe a very sharp rock. So you chew on the other side and keep going. It's warm now, the fire has done its job, and the scent of sour milk, smoke, and clay hangs heavy in the air. You should probably eat something. Just as you hoped, the fake sap is working. You lean in, the surface is thickened just slightly. You stick to boiling water and crossed fingers, thank you very much. Bronze is rare, difficult to make, and requires trade with people far away who speak in strange accents and wear trousers. They duck under the lintel and flop down beside you, peering at the hanging cheese bag like it might give up its secrets if they stare long enough. You bartered for yours with 5 wheels of cheese and a carved ivory comb. Your bronze pot has some baked-on residue along the edges. You'll need to scour it later with sand and salt. You run your fingers along the paddle, still smooth, no splinters. Your reed basket, however, is beginning to fray. You'll need to repair it before the next batch. You add it to your ever-growing mental list. Was it worth it? Absolutely. The pot heats evenly, lasts forever, and makes you feel like royalty even if you're scraping curds off the bottom like a peasant. The weight will press out more whey and shape the cheese into a firm wheel. You'll leave it there until dusk. You untie it, peel back the cloth, and there it is. A soft, pale mound of curdled milk, tangy, moist, and ready for pressing. You slice off a corner and hand it to your cousin. They take a bite and immediately pull a face. Smoke curling toward the thatch roof, your cousin licking their fingers, the pressed cheese quietly sweating under its stones. Life is simple, grueling, but there's a rhythm here. A quiet kind of purpose that comes from turning something perishable into something lasting. Translation: is there anything I can snack on while pretending to help? And the unmistakable ringing sound of bronze being hammered, probably the smith's apprentice who thinks everything needs hitting twice. If it doesn't serve a purpose, it doesn't get kept. Cheesemaking is art and gamble all at once. And there are no second chances when you only have one cow and a goat with an attitude problem. You don't have space for decorations or luxuries. Your walls are bare, save for a few hooks for tools, and your bed is just a mat rolled into the corner. A rooster crows very late like it's doing damage control. The daily soundtrack of your life. Maybe a second bronze pot. You'll save it, nothing goes to waste. Some goes into the next batch of bread. Some gets fed to the pigs. Some you drink when you're desperate, which is often. Carefully, reverently, you drag it through the milk. The knife line you leave behind is clean like parting a curtain of silk. Perfect curds. If you tilt the pot, it doesn't slosh, it wobbles. Like a slow jelly. This is the moment. You grab your long-handled paddle, a smooth plank of wood worn to a gentle curve. You begin to cut the curds, slicing long lines first lengthwise, then across, then diagonally. Outside, the village is coming alive. You hear the clatter of pottery, someone shouting about a runaway pig, the curds are ready to be strained. You twist the cloth shut and tie it tight with sinew, suspending it above a clay basin. The whey begins to drip, golden and steady. A quirky tidbit here, some Bronze Age people likely used urine to sterilize cheese-making tools. Not yours, though. With the curds draining, you finally take a moment to sit. You tear off a chunk of hard barley bread from yesterday, dip it in leftover whey, and chew slowly. It's dry, but it fills your stomach. Let's talk bronze for a moment. Your prized pot isn't just cookware, it's a status symbol. Historians still argue whether bronze pots were commonly used for food or reserved for ceremonial use. But in your world, everything is practical. You hear footsteps outside light and quick. Then a face appears at the doorway, your younger cousin, maybe 12 summers old, eyes wide with hope. Do you need help? They ask, you wave them in. I stirred the milk this morning, you say? And lost half of it? They gasp like it's the most dramatic thing they've ever heard. Hara again? You nod. They roll their eyes. Everyone knows about Hara. While the curds finish draining, you check your tools. The bag stops dripping. It's sour, they complain. Good, you say, means it's working. They eat the rest anyway. Cheese is cheese. You pack the curds into a round reed mold and place a flat stone on top. Another stone follows. Your press is crude but effective. This part is always a little tense. Will it set correctly? Will it crack? Did you use too much sap? Too little? You look around your hut. You wouldn't trade it for any, well, maybe a second bronze pot. The curds are firm now, yielding just a little under your thumb, but springing back like a confident answer. You lift the weight stone, set it aside, and carefully lift the cheese wheel from its reed mold. Still warm, still damp, and honestly, still ugly. But it's yours. You cradle the wheel in your hands like it's a newborn calf, inspecting every edge, every uneven fold in the rind. This is the alchemy of aging, flavor, and survival. And to do that, you'll need fig sap. Again, the surface is pale ivory, speckled here and there with bits of herb or stray curd, maybe not market ready, but nothing a few days of drying won't fix. Inside, the sap is thickened since you last opened it a golden, sticky resin you had to collect by slicing young fig branches and tying reeds underneath to catch the weeping fluid. It takes patience and a good memory because too much fig sap in your cheese turns bitter, too little and it never sets properly. No matter how hard the day is, these quiet moments matter. Not for coagulation this time, but for subtle preservation. Some believe it wards off spoilage. Others think it keeps the spirits out. The sun is high now, casting long shadows from the huts. Children run barefoot past you, carrying reeds and shouting about frogs. A woman calls for help carrying water. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the telltale thud of a heavy pestle grinding grain. You're just hoping it doesn't curdle into something that eats through the pot again. You gently place it on the drying rack near the back of your hut, angled to catch the draft from the doorway but far enough from the fire to avoid drying too fast. Cheesemaking in your world is a delicate dance with temperature. And let's be honest, your hut is basically one big temperature experiment. The sugars in the sap interact with the bacteria in the cheese, creating a rind that's tangy, slightly sweet. Hera only kicked the pail once. It has your own trick learned from your grandmother meant to dry the rind evenly and confuse any mold into growing somewhere else. Is it scientific? Not really, but it works. Cheese ages best when forgotten, but not too forgotten. That's when mice move in. You lay another small wheel, yesterday's batch, atop it to gently dry the rind. Not too close or it'll scorch. Slowly, steadily. It's becoming something that will last long after the milk would vet soured and the curds would vet collapsed. Was it a science of smell or something deeper? Maybe a little of both. You can tell when a wheel is wrong just by tapping it. To turn a morning chore into a food that feeds strangers months from now, your wheel might end up in another village. In another stew, on another trader's table. You don't know why, it's just something your hands understand better than your head. You've learned that the hard way. Cheese doesn't like surprises. And just strange enough to make people remember it at trade markets. Dust dances in the beams. You stretch your legs and shift your back, feeling each vertebra crack like dry sticks. Your hands smell of fig, milk, and smoke. You've worked since before the birds woke up. Your signature touch. Now comes the part that feels more like magic than craft, The curdling, you tried that once. Just once, your stomach is still angry about it. Yes, you already curdled it once, but this is different. You cross your hut, ducking under the drying herbs and hanging onions, and retrieve your little clay jar. 4 wheels sit there, now 2 barely set, 1 crusted with salt, and 1 already starting to show signs of surface mold. The good kind, you think? Probably. Mold's complicated. Sometimes it's a gift. Sometimes it's a sentence. Historians still debate whether the use of fig sap was an accidental discovery or an early form of chemical genius. It peels away like soft bark. Underneath, clean curd. You hum with satisfaction. Was it some barefoot genius who noticed milk thickened around fig trees? Or did someone dare to stir in tree goo just to see what would happen? Either way, it's stuck literally. You dab a thin coating of fig sap on the wheel's surface. The scent is earthy fig, milk, faint wood smoke, and the wheel feels denser than it did just hours ago. Your cousin has fallen asleep in the corner, curled next to a sack of barley, mouth half open. You smile and drape a goat hide over them. The morning's whey has cooled, so you pour it into a clay jar with a bit of barley flour and a pinch of ash not for flavor, but for preservation. You step outside for fresh air. Your neighbor greets you with a nod, eyeing the dried sap on your fingers. Pressed another, he asks. Goat and cow mix, you say. He whistles low, a good omen. Maybe this one won't mold like the last. You both chuckle, though you both know cheese molds no matter how many prayers you whisper over it. You sit near the smoking hearth where earlier fires have burned down to soft white coals. A flat stone sits near the edge, your warming slab. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. In some Bronze Age cultures, people added ground-up snail shells to their curds, claiming it helped with digestion. You glance at your drying shelves stacked neatly near the wall. You grab your bronze knife, dulled from years of use, and scrape a thin line of mold off the edge of the oldest wheel. You sprinkle ash and ground barley flour along its edges. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age cheesemakers had a true understanding of bacterial fermentation or just trusted their senses. You make a note to swap the dry. The sun's higher now, filtering through the thatch in thin golden blades. You duck inside your hut once more, eyes adjusting to the dim light as you check on the basket of curds you pressed earlier this morning. Not for flavor necessarily, but to keep flies away and lend a scent that says, I tried. You grab your stack of pressing stones, flat river rocks, scrub it clean, and begin to pile them carefully on top. The wheel is holding its shape just barely. Time to begin the pressing phase. The whey dribbles down through the woven reed basket, dark and pungent, not until it's been smoked, salted, or both. Judging by your hut, it's a bit of both. You've got a smoked shelf up in the rafters of rough wooden plank, blackened with soot where your hardest cheeses rest in the haze of every fire you light. Archaeologists have found small, deliberately buried wheels in ritual pits. Not beautiful, but that's not the point. It's survived 3 full moons without molding or collapsing, which is something to celebrate. You give it a quick polish with a scrap of linen and set it aside to trade later this week. Were they tributes? Offerings? Perhaps to avoid rain during harvest? No one knows, but the mice that found them first definitely weren't picky. You tip the basket slightly, letting the liquid pool in a clay basin nearby. You'll use that later to water your herb garden or toss it at your neighbor's chickens if they get too bold again. You lift the damp cheese from its cloth wrap and place it into a deeper reed basket lined with fresh herbs, thyme, and wild garlic. Mostly, salt sticks to your hands, under your nails, and every wrinkle of your skin. You'll be licking your knuckles all day whether you mean to or not. Not until dusk. And crushed sea flakes from a trader who swore it came from where the moon sleeps. You're not sure what that means, but it works. Listening. Cheesemaking, like life here, is a slow, squelchy affair. Your job is to slow it down long enough to make it taste like something. One has a crack, another looks suspiciously damp. You make a mental note to check for worms later. A rare but real cheese nightmare, and turned out to be your most savory cheese yet. The wheel is firming up beautifully now, slight sheen, no splits. You resist the urge to bite it like an apple. There's some evidence of herbs, maybe even dried fruit. You've tried adding chopped olives once. It didn't go well. Your cousin cried. The dog wouldn't eat it. Lesson learned. Traders still ask about it, but you've never been able to repeat it. Probably the goat's fault. The salt does more than preserve it, draws out moisture, toughens the rind, and gives the cheese that sharp, tangy bite the traders love. It's a scent you'll never escape, not even in sleep. But it's yours. You hear someone clanging bronze tools and the faint call of someone hawking dried plums from a reed mat near the main path, and you've still got enough milk for one more batch. Outside, a group of children run past laughing, one of them holding a wheel of something that is definitely not theirs. Someone will be crying in 10 minutes. It's market day. There are no timers, no digital pings, just your eyes, your hands, and an unspoken understanding that when things feel right, they usually are. 1, 2, 3 stones. The curds ooze slightly, just enough to let you know the pressure's working. You stretch your legs and settle beside the press, watching. Outside, the village is buzzing now. Children squeal with laughter as they chase a piglet around the fire pit. But you won't be going anywhere just yet. Your cheese isn't ready. You're sweaty, gritty, and your shoulders ache. But there's something deeply comforting about this rhythm. Milk to curds, curds to wheels, wheels to smoke or salt. And always some of it's spoiling anyway. 2 wheels sit up there, covered in a fine gray fuzz and the occasional cobweb. You swipe the webs off gently and sniff each one. Smoky, yes. Slightly sour, a little barky. That's probably fine. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age people had dedicated smokehouses for dairy products or if it was more of a casual toss dash it dash and dash the dash hearth dash and hope kind of system. You check on them now, balancing on a wobbly stool. Here's a fun tidbit. In parts of early Central Europe, cheese wasn't just a food, it was a gift to the gods. You bring one of your smoked wheels down from the shelf, crusty, firm, a little leathery. Now it's time to prep the salt trough. In the corner of your hut is a long, shallow clay basin filled with coarse gray salt, a mix of river salt, ash. You gently lower your freshest cheese wheel into the salt trough, coating its edges, rubbing salt into every crease like a baker working dough. It's messy work. Outside, a neighbor peeks into your hut. That wheel done yet? You shake your head. They sniff the air. Smells like you used fig again. You nod. Sap was thicker this time. They nod back like that means something profound. Maybe it does. You glance at your storage shelf, an uneven plank balanced on stones, holding your older wheels. 3 are good. You sit back down beside your salt trough and take a breath. Cheese, after all, is stubborn food. It wants to rot. Some of the best wheels come from failures. Like that one batch you left near the fire too long. You know the look. You've seen it enough times. That particular tilt of someone's head when they take a sniff of your cheese and try to decide whether it's edible or some sort of revenge offering. 5 wheels rest there, your pride, your worry, your long gamble. You run your hand lightly across the rind of one of the older wheels. It's firm, a bit sticky. Smells passable. Sharp, sour, with a hint of something that reminds you of wet sandals. You close it fast and mutter a small, respectful curse. This one is a loss. Some wheels are smoky, sharp, and rich with flavor. A solid wheel makes a soft, satisfying thud. This one? A bit hollow, suspicious. Others? Well, they belong in a separate category. Science experiments gone wrong. Some were found with animal bones, bits of pottery, and, intriguingly, tiny figurines that may have acted as guardians. The rind never formed properly, and it smells like damp moss. Or feed it to the chickens and pretend it never happened. You sniff, frown, and press a finger into its center. It sags like a waterlogged sponge. A soft cheese? Maybe. An accident? Definitely. Not what you meant to make, but maybe something worth keeping. Not for eating, mind you, but for poultices and healing salves. Cheese and mold and herbs slapped on a wound like a dairy bandage. You tried it once. On your cousin's scraped knee, it worked. Eventually. If the smell doesn't improve, at least it'll dry out enough to throw it at beef. Bronze Age cheese making is full of these little surprises. You make one thing, you end up with another. The good ones go into your trade basket, which you line with fresh straw. You toss the fuzzy lump into their trough, and they fight over it like it's a roast. The cracked one? You'll cut it up and serve it with dinner. Might pair well with that stale onion stew you've got simmering. Inside, on a hanging rack made from deer antler and vine cord, are your longer-aged wheels, tougher, smokier, and ideal for bartering. You just hope it doesn't try to crawl away on its own. You wipe sweat from your forehead and glance at your shelves. Some wheels made it. Some didn't. Some are still on the fence. You haven't buried any charms with your cheese, but you have carved your initials into the lid. That counts, right? You squat near the back of your hut, where your drying shelf runs along the cool, shaded wall. You pick it up and thump it gently. You slice it open with your dull bronze blade and the scent hits you like a kick door. Sometimes they just go that way. Even if you followed every step. Too much moisture, too little airflow. A fungus you didn't invite to the party. You don't throw it out though. No, that would be too simple. You'll let it finish its transformation in the corner and then feed it to the pigs. They love it. The air is thick with the scent of alder and pine. You reach up and rotate the wheels slowly, giving each a light tap to test for firmness. 2 are perfect. One is cracked, probably from too much heat. Another is covered in something fuzzy. You try not to think about what that says about pigs. Next wheel, you lift it carefully, salt-crusted, rinded well. It smells stronger than you'd serve to guests, but good strong. Aged, confident. This one's a keeper. It's technically outside the hut, but close enough to reach in the rain because let's be real. The bronze age doesn't come with a pantry. You store your best cheeses in a pit lined with clay shards and straw. The pit is covered with a large flat stone and sealed with mud. You pry open and lower the good wheel inside, laying it gently on a straw cushion. It's how rest here until it's time to trade or until your cousin accidentally discovers it and takes a bite the size of their face. Historians still argue whether storage pits were solely for food or used ritually as well. Back in the hut, you inspect another wheel. This one is strange. Pale, softer than expected. You could salt it now, try to save it. Or smoke it overnight and hope it toughens up. Instead, you slice a bit, take a cautious nibble and chew. It's not bad. Creamy, a little grassy, and just sharp enough to wake your taste buds. You decide to let it age a few days more and place it near the doorway where the breeze can coax out some of the moisture. A quirky tidbit. Some Bronze Age folks use cheese as medicine. The wind outside shifts and you catch the scent of smoke from the communal fire pit. Time to check the smoking shed. It's not really a shed. More like a lean-to made of sticks, bark, and 1,000 regrets, but it traps smoke well enough. You push open the flap and step into the smoky dimness. You pinch off the fuzz, taste it with a frown, and decide that one goes back to the pigs. You arrange the wheels in a stack and carry them carefully back toward your hut. And the moldy one? Straight to the pig pen. The pigs see you coming and squeal with delight. The sun is starting to sink now, turning the dirt path golden. But that's the game. Cheesemaking in the Bronze Age is part meal prep, part gamble, part slow-motion disaster. And yet, you wouldn't trade it for all the polished amber beads in the next village. You walk back inside, close the door behind you, and give one last glance at your drying shelf. Tomorrow it begins again. Milk, curds, wheels, hope. You're up again before dawn because of course you are. Cheese doesn't care that you barely slept or that your back's still sore from hauling firewood yesterday. Cheese has no mercy. It just curdles quietly in the dark, waiting to spoil the second you stop paying attention. Today, you're testing something new. You've heard whispers, rumors pass through the market stalls about a different kind of cheese. This morning, the fire's fussy, damp wood, too much ash. You crumble them between your fingers, delicate, fibrous, with a surprisingly pleasant herbal smell. You toss them in and stir slowly. You crouch and blow gently until the flames catch, all while muttering ancient odes about wet pine and poorly stored kindling. One made not with fig sap or animal rennet, but with wild thistle. You suspect it's because you let her chew on that weird tree bark yesterday. Either it soothed her stomach or mildly intoxicated her. Either way, milk acquired. Judging by your current gamble, maybe it was both. You give this batch a little extra time. The thistle curds seem softer, more delicate. You're nervous, but also excited. It is like watching a new animal be born and hoping it doesn't immediately run into a wall. You spot a man sharpening a bronze blade on a flat river stone, sparks flashing in the gloom. His wife is boiling something in a pot over an open flame, maybe dye for cloth or medicine or stew. It's hard to tell from this distance. Everything smells like smoke and onions. Supposedly, it curdles slower but creates a creamier texture. You've never tried it. You're not pressing this batch, no. This one is for fresh eating. If it survives that long. Supposedly for taste, though, maybe it was just whatever blew ashore during low tide. You've never tried seaweed cheese, but you imagine it tastes like regret and fish burps. You take it outside and begin to rewrap the edges with fresh fine cord. A slow, meditative task like brushing the knots out of your life one loop at a time. He doesn't stop. Too early. Too smelly. You get it. You press a fingertip into the surface and pull back with a grin. Soft cheese, spreadable, tangy, but your neighbor traded you a small pouch of dry purple thistle heads in exchange for a cracked wheel last week. You should trade this, they mumble between mouthfuls. It's better than the barky stuff. He called it forced magic. You're skeptical. Still, curiosity wins. After what feels like forever, the surface finally starts to tremble. You stop stirring and hold your breath. A few faint bubbles, a faint resistance when you tilt the pot. It's a win, and wins are rare enough in a world where mold, goats, and weather conspire against you at every turn. Even if it was just, don't use the milk from the one-eyed goat in summer. Oral tradition, mental notes, gut instinct. All part of the process. Maybe mix thistle with fig. Maybe press a batch and see if it holds. You start by milking Hera and Dolma again. Hera is in a surprisingly good mood today, which means she only tried to kick you twice and actually gave a decent yield. With the pail warm and full, you return to your hut and get the bronze pot on the hearth. Eventually, the milk begins to simmer. You reach for your new ingredient, a few shredded heads of dried thistle. Maybe this batch becomes your new signature. Maybe it spoils before lunch. Either way, it's part of the rhythm. The scent changes immediately, not unpleasant, but different, earthy, a bit bitter. Like someone boiled weeds in optimism. You lower the heat and wait. Historians still argue whether plant-based coagulants like thistle or nettle were common in Bronze Age cheesemaking or whether they were fringe experiments by regional cheesemakers. You keep stirring, watching the milk carefully. It's working. You beam like a fool and whisper to yourself, forest magic, huh? Once the curds are properly forming, you repeat your now instinctive steps. Cut the curds with your wooden paddle, let them rest, scoop them into a cloth-lined basket, and hang the bundle near the hearth to drain. While it drains, you decide to tidy up. Your reed basket still warped as flaking. You glance toward the edge of the village. A few other families are up now. You nod to a passing trader on the path, a bearded man with a wooden yoke across his shoulders, 2 baskets swinging with dried fish and what you hope is not expired honey. You return to the curds and untie the cloth. The texture is smooth, almost velvety. This is different. You scoop it into a shallow clay bowl, sprinkle it with dried thyme, and set it aside to rest. A quirky tidbit. In some coastal Bronze Age communities, cheeses were flavored with dried seaweed. Back inside, your cousin's awake. Sort of. They lurch from the barley sack, hair sticking out in every direction, face creased from sleep. What's that smell? They mumble. New cheese, you say. They wander over, dip a finger in the soft curd, and take a taste. Their eyes widen. It's good. You try not to look too pleased. Thought so. They grab a chunk of barley bread and begin scooping the cheese like it is some divine pudding. Thanks, you say. That barky stuff paid for the thistle. They pause. Oh, still gross though. You chuckle and let them eat. You read a little note in your memory mental record keeping. You'll try this again next week. Historians don't know if Bronze Age cheesemakers kept written records, but you're certain they kept some kind of recipe system. You watch the fire dance on the hearth. Later that day, once the thistle cheese is tucked away to cool, you step outside to stretch your legs and to escape the smell. It's not unpleasant, just persistent, like a wet goat wearing a crown of herbs. The field is an open expanse of scrubby grass and low weeds, bordered by a half-hearted fence made of driftwood and wishful thinking. You jog over, arms flailing like an angry crane. She freezes, wide-eyed, mid-escape, then bolts in the other direction. Her hoofs scatter dirt. The other goats follow because panic is contagious. The goats have absolutely no respect for it. It's a game you never win, but one you play daily. You give it a respectful nod. Its cousins are probably responsible for half your cheese. Cheesemaking allowed them to preserve surplus milk during these transitions. You feed it with a few small logs and stir the embers until the flames catch. And the interior is dense, slightly crumbly, and smells sharp, like vinegar and smoke. You cut a wedge, place it on a clay plate, and take a bite. You grab one of the older wheels from the shelf, the one you salted 2 moons ago, and decide today is the day you taste it. You've never done the full migration yourself, but you've helped load a dozen bleeding goats onto a raft before. Never again. The sun is your best ally when it comes to keeping rot at bay. That and a healthy fear of mold with ambition. The shadows stretch. The air cools. You think about the cheese you've made this week, each wheel with its own little story. The one that cracked and healed over. The one that molded too soon. The one that didn't mold at all and made you worry more than you'd admit. The hearth fire is low, releasing just enough haze to season the rind without cooking it. But for now, the air is still, the goats are quiet. And your hands smell like smoke and milk and something herbal you can't quite place. You hum a quiet song one your grandmother used to sing when salting cheese. You don't know the words anymore, but the melody sticks, like hurt to cloth. Tangy, a little nutty, with a bitter aftertaste that reminds you of your neighbor's cough medicine. Cheese always tastes better when it's paired with something. Like suffering and sunshine. Based on how you agonize over flavor, texture, and scent, yeah, pride was definitely part of it. But it's not spoiled, it's alive. Maybe next season you'll try aging a wheel in clay, or wrapping one in leaves. The traders from the southern hills say that's how they keep theirs fresh during the long trek. You're not sure you believe them, but you're curious enough to try. Were they symbols of profession? Tools for the afterlife? Or just what was handy at the time? Hard to say. But if you ever get buried, you'd like a wheel of your best aged goat cheese under your arm. Just in case. No one warns you that once you start making cheese, everything smells vaguely of curd. Your clothes, your hair, your dreams. The breeze carries the smell of smoke, damp earth, and something else, something pungent and slightly sour, cheese. Yours, most likely. You smile. The grass is low, not dangerously so, but you'll need to think about rotating them soon. The next field over belongs to your cousin's family, but they owe you cheese anyway. Maybe it's time to call in that favor. You follow the dirt path toward the communal grazing field, where most of the village's animals are herded during the warmer months. Sure enough, you spot Hera, your four-legged nemesis, halfway through squeezing under one of the fence rails. You mutter as you chase them, stick in hand, trying not to trip over your own sandals. Eventually, you corner the herd near the old fig tree. It leans slightly, bark scarred from generations of sap harvesting. You settle the goats again and check their grazing area. As you turn back toward the village, you pause. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Bronze Age. Communities often practiced transhumance, the seasonal moving of livestock between highland and lowland pastures. Back at the hut, the fires burn low. You slice into it slowly, reverently. The rind gives way with a soft crunch. It's intense. You grab some dried apple slices, a hunk of barley bread, and make yourself a small meal. You eat slowly, watching the light shift across your dirt floor. A quirky tidbit here. Some early Bronze Age grave sites included cheese molds buried with the dead. You finish your meal and clean your tools. Every paddle, knife, and basket gets scrubbed with ash and hot water, then laid out in the sun to dry. While your hands work, your mind drifts. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age cheesemakers innovated out of necessity or culture. Was it all about preservation? Or was there early culinary pride at work? As evening falls, you place one final wheel in the smoke rack. You sit down, exhausted but oddly satisfied. Tomorrow you'll milk again. Press again. Salt again. The thistle cheese is resting. The smoked wheels are aging. And your belly is full of your own creation. Cheese might be temperamental, moldy, sometimes tragic. But when it works, it's beautiful. The night passes with the usual soundtrack: distant owls, the occasional goat bleating at something invisible, and a gentle creaking from the rafters as the smoke shelf cools. You sleep curled up beside your dwindling hearth, wrapped in a blanket that smells vaguely of wool, ash, and your entire career as a cheesemaker, comforting, if a bit pungent. Morning arrives in soft gray light. Once semi-aged, salted, and firm. And the last is your masterpiece. Smoked for 4 weeks, rind rubbed with thyme and dried ash, and aged to a complexity that makes even your cousin stop talking mid-bite. There's mist outside, clinging low to the grass like a forgotten blanket. You stretch, crack every bone you didn't know you had, and start the fire again. Embers flicker, a few sticks snap. Soon the warm glow returns, licking the base of your bronze pot like an old friend. Today you're preparing a trade bundle, and smells strong ones. Dried fish, honey, old wool. Someone's burning something that smells like regret. A local bartering caravan is passing through and you've got exactly 3 wheels worth showing off. One soft and fresh, the thistle experiment. He sees your crate and grins. You clean each wheel like you're preparing royalty. A damp cloth for the rind. A light brushing for stray bits of straw. You even rewrap the cracked edge of the semi-aged one with a thin reed belt, not for function, just for flair. He sniffs, pokes, cuts tiny samples with a dagger probably older than you. One of those rabbit pies I didn't make myself. Then he chews in silence, which is rare for him. Everything smells earthy, sharp, and strangely soothing. Like you bottled a season and gave it texture. You pack them into a wicker crate lined with dry herbs and a scrap of goat hide. Someone's banging pots near the well. A woman passes carrying dyed wool and a sack of dried legumes, her eyes scanning for the best trade opportunity. Its market energy chaotic, competitive, and lightly perfumed with ambition and sweat. Value is tied to usefulness. Cheese, being both portable and long-lasting, was high on the list, especially aged or smoked varieties that could survive weeks without spoiling. Outside, the village is buzzing. Children chase each other with bundles of dried rushos, pretending they're spears, likely both. A necessity for daily life and a treat for those who could wait. You've tasted your own wheel after 6 weeks of aging. You cried a little. It might have been the salt. Tenant farmers might owe part of their yield to landowners in the form of wheels, curds, or even raw milk. The linen will patch your tunic. The salt is priceless. Every grain means another wheel preserved. And the rabbit pie? You unwrap it slowly, take a bite, and sigh. Imagine paying rent with dairy. You've considered it, honestly. Your neighbor has a nice hut. He also has bad taste. You could probably trick him into a soft rind special. You sling your cheese crate over one shoulder, grab a hunk of barley bread for the road, and start down the dusty path toward the caravan camp. But they've earned their way into someone else's life now. Practical things. They sniff it, nibble the edge, and then grin. Tastes weird, you're skeptical. Still, it smells good. A mainstream historical fact. Bronze Age communities didn't use money in most cases. As you approach the camp, you take in the familiar setup. Hides stretched across low wooden frames, carts with woven baskets, bronze trinkets glinting in the morning light. Wheels get sliced, lost, stolen, sometimes worshipped. You spot a trader you recognize, Aras, the one with the perpetual sunburn and a laugh that sounds like falling stones. Is that what I think it is? He says, gesturing with a skinned rabbit in one hand and a jar of fermented berries in the other. Depends, you reply. You thinking about cheese or disappointment? He laughs and waves you over. You lay your wheels out on a flat plank and let him examine them. This one, he says finally, holding up the smoked wheel, I'll give you 2 bolts of linen, 3 handfuls of salt, and... Deal, you say before he changes his mind. He wraps the cheese reverently and tucks it away like treasure. You beam. The soft wheel your thistle experiment draws a younger trader. She tastes it, eyes wide. This is new, she says. Not bad. You barter it for a small clay oil lamp, half a jar of honey, and a strange dried fruit she claims is from beyond the mountains. The last wheel trades quickly for bronze needles and a reed mat. You walk home with your arms full and your crate empty. The satisfaction is complicated. You'll miss those wheels. Each one took a piece of your patience. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some ancient cultures, cheese was used as a form of rent. Historians still argue whether cheese in the Bronze Age was considered a staple or a luxury. Back in your hut, you sort through your new treasures. Sweet, savory, no fur, a miracle. Your cousin bursts in, eyes wide. Did you trade the smoked one? Gone, you say, mouthful of pie. They groan. That was the good one. You didn't even like it. Didn't mean I didn't want to finish it. You toss them the fruit from the mountain. Perfect, you say. You'll start another batch tomorrow, maybe 2. Your goat's still in a good mood and the weather's holding. Trade comes and goes. The rain comes that night, not the gentle kind, but the sideways kind that soaks everything you've ever owned and leaves your drying racks weeping into the earth. You wake in the dark to the sound of dripping, splashing, and something large knocking over your clay basin. Probably a goat, possibly your cousin. You groan, roll over, and debate whether to face the storm or pretend it isn't happening. But you already know the answer. Cheese waits for no one. Especially not the weather. You tug on your damp tunic, grab a reed torch, and shuffle outside into the deluge. The rain is cold, fat, and relentless. You squint through the dark and spot your drying rack listing sideways like a drunken boat. A few wheels have rolled off and are now sitting in the mud, collecting water like clay soup bowls. You mutter every impolite phrase you know, scoop the wheels into a basket, and haul them back into the hut. They're soaked, grimy, and smell faintly of disappointment. You fall firmly in the whatever's dry and less smelly than the goat shed camp. You step outside with a sour expression and immediately step in something worse than mud. The goats stare at you like they planned it. You drag out the reed mat, lay it near the hut's entrance, and begin drying your salvageable cheeses in the patchy sunlight that filters through the clouds. It's not great. It's not even good, but it'll do. You peel back the cloth from the least damaged wheel. It's salvageable. Maybe. The rind is damp but intact. The interior might have survived. You set them near the hearth and start the fire again gently this time, with the reverence of someone who's had one too many mornings ruined by wet ash. Supposedly the earth kept a consistent temperature and humidity level. You once tried it. You toss in the thistle you saved, but this time you blend it with a dash of fig sap, an experiment born of boredom and desperation. Unfortunately, your pot cracked and a mole moved in. He was surprisingly territorial. It'll forgive you, but it won't forget. You never understood that as a child. Now, it feels prophetic. You grab a scrap of linen and start wiping down each wheel like you redrawing a cat gently. You nod. Fine, but next time clouds cost more than sparrows. But with the understanding that someone's going to get hurt eventually. With what? And for a moment it's almost peaceful. Not ideal, but better than watching your wheels drown in puddles. You mutter threats at the storm and thank the fire gods, if only sarcastically. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age cheesemakers had dedicated curing rooms or simply worked with what they had: smoke, airflow, and prayers. You rebuild the drying rack indoors near the warmest wall. As you work, you remember something your grandmother used to say: a wet cheese is like a wet dog. Morning comes slowly, wrapped in gray. The village is a mess mud pits where pathways used to be, toppled baskets, smoke rising unevenly from damp hearths. You rest your back against the hut wall, feeling the heat from the fire soak into your sore shoulders. You pour them into the reed mold, press them gently with a flat stone, and set them near the hearth to begin drying. Still, you have a job to do. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Bronze Age communities use clay pots buried in the ground to age cheese during rainy seasons. Based on your current state, you lean toward toil with occasional naps. Back inside, you stir a new batch of milk, still stubbornly planning to make today productive. The curd forms slowly. You press it lightly. The texture seems off. Could be the humidity. Could be your moodity. Your cousin pops in mid-stir, soaking wet, holding two small birds and a big grin. "Traded for these," they shout. You blink. They hold up a cheese wheel, one of yours. They love the soft one. Said it tasted like clouds. You stare. That was a backup. They gave me birds. You sigh, but the birds are plump and fresh. They grin and disappear again. You check the curds. Better now, a little firmer. And then finally you sit, just for a moment. Historians still debate whether Bronze Age villagers had time to rest or lived in an endless cycle of toil. You close your eyes briefly. You imagine a world where cheese wheels dry themselves, where goats don't kick, where rain doesn't ruin everything you love. Then something crashes outside. You groan, stand up, and grab your stick. One more wheel saved. One more day survived. In the Bronze Age, that's as close to victory as you get. The rain is gone by morning, swept away by a hard wind that scrubs the sky until it gleams with brutal, cloudless light. The kind of sun that doesn't warm so much as it glares. You step outside, blinking, arms full of drying mats, and immediately feel your skin begin to crisp. Perfect drying weather. Terrible everything else. You carry your salvaged cheese wheels out into the yard and arrange them neatly on a low wooden shelf that you propped up with a couple of flat stones. 3 hard wheels, salt-rubbed and holding shape. 2 soft ones, still oozing slightly, but now more gooey than grim. And one mystery cheese, a squat, stubborn thing you press during the storm, which smells like mushrooms and ambition. 2 children sit nearby, poking at beetles. One of them, sticky with honey and dust, points to a drying wheel and asks, "Is that the one with herbs?" The wood is warm already, and the breeze is just strong enough to keep the flies second-guessing. You flip each wheel like a baker with a batch of loaves, quick, practiced, just a little proud. It's a good spread today. You'll taste it later, or assign that job to your cousin. As you work, a small crowd forms, not unusual. People love to watch cheesemaking when they don't have to do it themselves, you nod. Thyme and wild garlic. Is it for eating? You consider? Eventually. Cooking and cheesemaking were rarely solitary crafts. You're reminded of this every time someone shows up uninvited with a spoon and curiosity. The flavor combination is strange but delicious, earthy, sweet, just a touch sour. You could get used to this. Might even claim you invented it. Whether it was forgotten, burned, or sacrificed to the gods of poor timing is unclear. The sun is high now, and the drying shelf is in full blast. You turn each wheel again, checking for cracking or spotting. You catch a beetle trying to burrow into a soft rind and flick it away with a muttered threat. You suspect it was just someone distracted by a goat. For now, it sits in a small sealed jar, thick as honey and smelling faintly of rubber and fruit. They look disappointed. Probably wanted to lick it. You slice a small notch into the bark and collect the white, sticky sap in a shallow clay bowl. The tree bleeds slowly, silently. You thank it with a gentle tap and head back. You wave them off gently, then turn to your neighbor who's settled up holding a poorly wrapped bundle. The wheel's got at least 2 more weeks before peak flavor, but the bread is ready now and it's warm. And something red you can't identify. It smells aggressive. You gather your tools, a knife for trimming rinds, a cloth for wiping sweat, and a woven basket for collecting figs. You pinch off a corner and take a nibble. It's oddly sweet, possibly fermented. Your eyebrows raise in surprise. "Trade?" she asks. You eye them warily. Your cheese has enough drama already. You've seen your grandmother whisper to an olive tree like it was her sister. Maybe it was. It doesn't help. It never does. You do it anyway. It presses beautifully firm, even almost smug in its roundness. You wrap it in cloth and place it near the fire to begin drying. The heat's just right today. No mold, no sagging. No goat hair. You unwrap it carefully. Inside is a small round flatbread covered in what appears to be onion fig slices. "What do you want for it?" you ask. Your shelf is full again. Your goats are finally quiet. And your latest wheel still warm sits beside you like a promise. She nods toward one of your salted wheels, the one with the prettiest rind, you consider. Deal, you say, and the trade is done. Here is a mainstream historical fact. Archaeologists have found evidence of communal food preparation in many Bronze Age settlements, large hearths, shared ovens, grinding stones worn down by many hands. Back inside your hut, you slice the bread, pair it with a few spoonfuls of the thistle fig cheese, and sit on the floor to eat. A quirky tidbit. In one ancient alpine site, they found a piece of cheese lodged in a cooking pot, charred and preserved. After breakfast, you get back to work. You rinse your hands in a basin of herb water, lavender, and mint, mostly for scent, partly to convince yourself you're clean. You need more sap. The fig tree stands at the edge of the village, its twisted limbs already heavy with new leaves and unripened fruit. Historians still debate whether Bronze Age people viewed trees as sacred or simply useful. You lean toward both. Back in the hut, you strain the fig sap through a cloth to remove any bark flecks or insects. You'll use it later this week. Your cousin reappears around midday, carrying something wrapped in woven reeds. "Guess what I found," they say, unwrapping the bundle with a flourish. Inside, mushrooms. Bright orange, plump, and slightly damp. "Where did you get those?" You ask, instantly suspicious. "By the old logs, near the beehives." You stare. "Those could be poison, or delicious, or both," you sigh. "Let's dry them, maybe far away from everything." They shrug and toss the mushrooms onto a spare mat near the doorway. You spend the rest of the afternoon You wake to the sound of singing. Not birdsong, actual human singing. Off-key, enthusiastic, and unmistakably your cousin. They're outside the hut, serenading the goats with what you suspect is an improvised ballad about curds and destiny. You lie still for a moment, wondering if it's worth getting up at all today. But you do, because your latest wheel is ready for its first real inspection. You rise slowly, stretch your back with a satisfying crunch, and cross to the cloth-wrapped form near the hearth. The aroma hits you before you touch it, nutty, warm, and just a little tangy. You peel back the linen and reveal a soft golden crust. It looks almost too pretty to be yours. You slice a tiny wedge from the edge. Bright and sharp at first, then mellow and buttery. You blink at the cheese as if it just said something profound. The inside is tender, creamy, slightly elastic. You taste it. And pause, it's good. Better than good, it's balanced. Perfect, you whisper. Your cousin sticks their head through the doorway. What's perfect? You hand them a sliver on the end of your knife. They chew, then they frown. Some evidence suggests these early methods were passed down for centuries, morphing as they traveled. You take a small earthen jar, the one you hide near the doorframe, and pull out your bundle of dried animal stomach likely from a young goat. Over the next few hours, it will steep into a cloudy, enzyme-rich liquid, the active ingredient in your more traditional cheese batches. You watch the mixture swirl slowly and try not to think about where it came from. Again, the curd cloths are crusted and smell like a goat's bad dream. You boil a pot of water over the fire, stir in ash, and plunge the cloths in one by one. Steam rises. So does your sweat. It's been cured, soaked in wine and salt, and smells like something between rawhide and vinegar. What you've made today. Maybe it's one of those distant ancestors. A proto-cheese, a relic with flavor. It's single quotes s. Great. No weird aftertaste, no mold. Are you sure you made this? You shudder. You tried fish once. The results were aquatic, never again. You sit for a moment, staring at your shelf, at the wheels you've saved, the ones you've lost, and the ones you're still not sure about. You'd believe either. You've seen people get downright reverent over a perfectly aged wheel. Your cousin named it the Wheel of Regret. Every so often, they still pretend to hear it whispering. Maybe even to the village elder if he promised not to spit it out like last time. Later, you'll wrap it in wax cloth and store it for trade or celebration. You nod, trying not to beam. You've earned every curd, every cracked rind, every late-night fire restart. The sun's risen high and it's going to be another scorcher. Perfect for drying. Terrible for thinking. Hera is trying to eat your cousin's tunic while they yell dramatically about betrayal and fashion. You shake your head and return inside. You rub the rind with salt and ash, hoping to seal it better. Sometimes a wound just needs a crust to heal. You remind yourself of that often. The fact that your fingernails will never truly stop smelling like whey. This wheel, this day, it feels like a turning point, like something changed. Like all the mistakes and accidents finally taught you something. Mainstream historical fact, certain Bronze Age cheeses were likely the predecessors of specific European varieties, like feta or halloumi. You place the rest of the wheel on a clean reed mat to cool completely. Your cousin lingers nearby. You gonna share the rest? Eventually, you say, maybe. They sigh and head outside. You hear them muttering something about cheese envy and sibling betrayal. While the wheel rests, you turn to another important task, preparing rennet. This is not glamorous work. You crush it gently and add it to a warm bowl of water. Quirky tidbit, some Bronze Age recipes may have used fish stomachs or even snails for coagulating milk. You set the rennet aside and turn your attention to cleaning. This is the side of cheesemaking nobody talks about. The endless washing, the way your hands are permanently pruny. You hang the cloths outside and wipe your face with your sleeve. You check your shelf. The soft cheese from yesterday is firming up nicely. The hard wheel with the crack is holding together barely. Historians still argue whether ash rubbing was done primarily to preserve cheese or if it had some spiritual significance. Outside, the goats are mostly behaving, mostly. Dolma is lying down, chewing lazily. The air in the hut is warm, heavy with the scent of milk, herbs, and smoke. You remember your first cheese, hard as a rock, cracked in half when you tried to slice it. You buried it behind the hut out of shame, but now you've made something worth remembering. A wheel you'd serve to a trader. The next morning begins with a rare surprise. Nothing goes wrong. No tipped pails, no cracked curds. No goat-related chaos. Unless you count your cousin who is loudly trying to compose a cheese song using only a flute and poor judgment. You almost don't trust it. Still, the air is cool, the sun is gentle, and your best wheel from yesterday is aging peacefully in its cloth wrap. It's quiet. Suspiciously quiet. On the path, you pass two young girls collecting berries. One of them points and whispers, "That's the cheesemaker." You decide to visit the elder. Not because you want praise, he hasn't complimented anything since the late drought, but because he's the closest thing your village has to a taste expert. Years ago, he was a traveling trader, bartering cheese, salt, and dried meat across half the known world. He claims to have eaten sheep curd made in pots of copper and camel cheese fermented in leather sacks. You're not sure if any of that is true, but the man has opinions, and those are valuable. You carry your precious wheel in a woven basket, wrapped tightly, as if it might run away. You pretend not to hear, but you can't help but smile. The elder's hut smells like sage and ancient complaints. He waves you in with a bony hand and clears a spot beside the fire. You sit, unwrap the wheel, and slice a small wedge. He examines it like it's a carved jewel. He sniffs, taps it with his fingernail. Then takes a bite. Chews more, swallows. You feel like you've just won a war. Probably poisonous, he admits, but unforgettable. Every wheel you make carries something of the day, the weather, your mood. Even the firewood matters. Silence. You flip it carefully and mutter thanks that it didn't cave in entirely. You briefly consider making your cousin do this. They're already singing nonsense. Might as well make it useful. You forgot to turn the soft wheel, they say, glaring. You're starting to sweat. You press curds into molds. You salt the aging rind of yesterday's batch. You collect herbs, thyme, garlic leaves, and a few sprigs of wild lavender. You're preparing a new experiment, a lightly herb-coated wheel meant to age for 3 full moons. Finally, he nods. Tastes like you stopped making mistakes. You exhale so hard your hair moves. You think it's both. Nobody wants a bland wheel. But a wheel that smells like a herb garden? That's one people remember. He offers you a bit of barley bread and gestures for another slice. What did you use? Fig sap, a bit of thistle, pressed lightly. Aged in cloth by the hearth. He grunts in approval. Not bad, not clever either. But not bad. If someone like this said your cheese was good, it became more than food. It became tradition. The smell is intoxicating, earthy, grassy, alive. In the distance, you hear drums. Probably someone's wedding, or funeral, or both. These days, they're often the same event. That's the closest thing to a compliment he's given anyone in 10 years. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Elders in Bronze Age communities were often the memory keepers, oral historians, recipe guardians, and arbiters of taste. You hand it over cautiously. You sit and chat with him for a while. He tells you about a cheese he once tasted in the mountains that smelled like pine and made your mouth tingle. You take mental notes. Not about poisonous cheese, though. You're curious now, but about how memory and flavor intertwine. Back at your hut, your cousin greets you by throwing a damp cloth at your face. You rush inside. The wheel is slightly flattened on one side, but still edible. Not because every wheel is perfect, but because more and more people are asking for the ones that used to be mistakes. A quirky tidbit. In some Bronze Age households, young apprentices were required to sing or chant while turning cheese wheels to help them remember timing. You move through the rest of your tasks with new energy. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age flavoring was about preservation or prestige. Your cousin appears again, holding a half-eaten fig and looking concerned. Do we have any more of that sharp cheese? The one that made my tongue hurt a little. You blink. The sour smoked one? They nod eagerly. Yeah, it was weird, but in a good way. You dig through your shelf and find the last wedge. It's hard as a bone and smells like old vinegar. They bite, chew, pause, then nod. Still weird, still good. You smile. That's how you know you're getting better. You sit outside as the sun dips low, a soft wheel in your lap, brushing its rind gently with an herb oil mixture. You think about the elder, his cracked hands, his sharp tongue, his quiet nod, and you think about your next wheel. Because that's the rhythm now, not days or seasons. Just wheels, make, age, trade, taste, repeat. The sun rises thick and gold over the village. It catches on the dew-damp thatch roofs, the still shiny footprints of goats, and the lazy curls of smoke escaping chimney holes. Your back is sore again, but your mood is suspiciously good. You've got a plan today, a bold one. You're going to teach someone else how to make cheese. Not because you retiring your hands wouldn't know what to do without curds in them, but because there's value in passing it on. Besides, if you ever want a day off, someone else needs to know how not to ruin everything. You choose Mira. Her family trades honey, and she once described your cheese as decent. High praise, honestly. She's 12, barely tall enough to see over the curd pot, but sharper than a bronze awl and twice as stubborn. She arrives at your hut before sunrise, clutching a basket of firewood and a suspiciously clean tunic. You suspect she borrowed it from someone she admires. You ready? You ask. You show her how to stack the sticks and coax the flames. She leans in too close and singes a hair. Doesn't flinch. She nods. Serious, solemn, like this is initiation into a secret society. You start with the fire, always the fire. It must be even, strong but not frantic. Good sign. Next, the milk. You skim the cream from last night's batch, still cool and sweet-smelling. Children learned by watching, helping, and eventually doing. She peers in with wide eyes as the first ripples of curd form, delicate and gelatinous. You nod. That's the moment. That's where the magic starts. You tell her you tried that once and spent a week chiseling cheese out of the pot. The goats found it hilarious. She watches as you pour it into the wide bronze pot and set it over the fire. Then how to stir it, gently warming the pot to separate the whey. She's focused now, committed, the way you were the first time. You made something that didn't collapse. Simple, flexible, and less likely to become cheese tombs. Why don't we stir yet? She asks. Because if you stir too early, it turns into soup, not curd, you say? Patience, apprentice. The whey, still warm and sweet, is drained into a basin. Myra sniffs it suspiciously. Her smile twitches. Here's a mainstream historical fact. Apprenticeship wasn't formalized in the Bronze Age the way it was later, but many trades passed down through families or close community bonds. The sun's climbing higher now, and you point out the shelf where your other wheels are aging. You show her how to add the fig sap, stirring slowly, watching the milk thicken. Looks like porridge, she says flatly. It's emotional porridge. She laughs and the curd jiggles slightly. Progress. As the curd sets, you use the downtime to prep the reed molds. She asks why you don't use clay. A quirky tidbit. Archaeologists have found imprints of woven mats and some ancient cheese remnants. Evidence that early molds were probably similar to what you were using today. You show her how to cut the curd carefully with a reed blade. You scoop the curds into the molds, let them rest. You can cook with that? She asks. But you know one thing, if it were easy, you'd be sleeping right now. Yep, bread, soups, even feed it to pigs. Nothing goes to waste, not even your curiosity. Lopsided, a little leaky. But solid, hers, she snorts. I'm not feeding pigs. Give it time. You both step outside while the curds settle. And in a few weeks, we see what it wants to be. She asks if cheese can talk. They all look the same, Mira says. They're not. She walks over, pokes one. How do you remember which is which? Because I made them, you'll see. You hand her a wedge of her own curd from earlier. Soft, warm, a little sour. She tastes it, frowns, then shrugs. It's weird. Good weird? Almost. You'll take it. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age cheesemaking was considered skilled labor or simply another domestic task. You teach her how to salt the curds, how to brush the rind as it hardens, and how to listen for the subtle, worrying sounds of cracking. Only if you really mess up, you say, or if it's aging too fast. That one there. Whispered something rude last week. She smirks. I like this job. By late afternoon, her first wheel is pressed and drying near the hearth. You wrap it carefully and set it on the shelf. Now what? She asks. Now, you say, we wait, we turn it every day. We brush it, we talk to it if we're bored. She nods, already calculating how to explain this to her honey-obsessed family. As she leaves, she turns back. Hey, will it taste like yours? You shake your head. Nope, it'll taste like yours. She grins. And just like that, you wake up later than usual. Not because you meant to sleep in, but because for once nothing needed your urgent attention at dawn. No goat escaped, no curd curdled too fast. You sit up, stretch, and breathe it in. No cousin bursts in holding a broken jar and a suspicious alibi. Instead, it's quiet. The soft kind of quiet that tells you the village is breathing evenly for a change. Then, as always, you check the cheese. One was pressed while you were crying. That one didn't turn out, but you remember it anyway. The day is warm and clear, and the air smells like earth, charcoal, and freshly trodden grass. You think you'll try something with garlic leaves and ash maybe wrapped in smoked reed. No one in the village has tried that, yet. Doma the goat greets you by headbutting your shin in what you've decided is affection. You nudge her back gently. Good morning to you too, tyrant. The shelf by the wall holds 7 wheels today, some fresh, some nearly done. One is Myra's. You turn it gently, inspecting the rind. It's drawing beautifully, more evenly than your first 10 attempts ever did. You smile just a little. You run a fingertip over its edge and feel the slight give of perfection, not too hard, not too soft. You'll cut into that one tomorrow maybe, or save it for the next big tray. Then you brush one of your own wheels, an older one, smoked and salted, its surface almost silky with age. It's strange how attached you get. Each wheel is like a chapter in your life. Some were born on stormy nights. Some during good harvests. One person's mistake is another person's memory. You head outside, buried intentionally? A snack stash gone wrong? No one knows. But you like the idea of a sacred cheese hoard. Down by the fig trees, you find the sap pot full again. Enough for another few batches. You'll start a new wheel this afternoon. She checks her wheel with careful hands and an overly serious expression. You nod at her progress. She tries not to beam. Then you hand her a wedge of your newest wheel, the soft-run, thistle-heavy one with a streak of smoke. New preservation techniques meant fewer spoiled goods, more trade options, and longer-lasting stores for winter or travel. You're not inventing luxury. I didn't say great. Be still, my heart. You're pushing your odds of making it through the hard seasons. The light stretches long and gold over the hills. There's peace in this, in the simplicity. In the rhythm. Mainstream historical fact. Experimentation in Bronze Age food making wasn't just for novelty, it was survival. Back inside, your cousin is sitting on your floor eating dried apples. They look up as you enter. Remember that weird cheese from last month? They ask with a full mouth. The one that smelled like wet rope? You ask. Do you think people will make cheese like this in 100 seasons? They nod. Someone from the next village loved it. Said it reminded them of their grandmother. Cheese isn't just cheese anymore, it's community. Should I be honored or worried? Then says, I think I'll still like this way best. They shrug. They traded a bronze awl for it. You blink. That's more than fair. That's generous, actually. You glance at your cheese shelf again. Quirky tidbit, in one preserved Bronze Age settlement, a wheel of cheese was found partially buried beneath a storage hut alongside beads and carved bone tools. Was it forgotten? Myra stops by in the late afternoon. She tastes it, chews, then looks up. Better than decent, you fake a gasp. She rolls her eyes. Yet. The two of you sit on the ground outside, watching the goats wander through the lower pasture. Historians still argue whether Bronze Age cheesemakers thought of themselves as artisans or just laborers. You've stopped caring. You know what you are. You're a maker of food, of flavor, of comfort. Each wheel you craft becomes part of the village eaten at weddings, traded at markets, served at naming ceremonies. Myra lies back on the grass, chewing her last bite. You shrug. Maybe they'll find better ways. She's quiet for a moment. You smile. The sun slips below the hills. The day ends not with ceremony or chaos, but with contentment. And a fresh curd waiting for tomorrow. The sky softens now, stretching into deep blue as the last glow of the fire fades to quiet embers. Outside your hut, the goats are finally silent. Myra's gone home, your cousin is likely asleep in someone else's doorway, and the only sound is the soft breath of night settling over everything. The air smells of salt and thyme, clay and wood smoke. One wheel cracks gently as it cools, the sound so faint you almost don't notice, but you smile. You know what it means. You sit beside your wheel shelf, your strange little library of time. More milk, more curd. The same steps you've taken 100 times before, but still somehow new. There's comfort in repetition, in the quiet knowledge that even the softest, strangest beginnings can turn into something worth sharing. Tomorrow will bring more work. You lie down near the fire, blanket tucked beneath your chin, hands still faintly scented with milk and herb. Your body's tired, but your mind is calm, floating now, not on ambition or worry, but on the gentle hum of memory, of stories passed down through flavor. And as your breathing slows, you let it all fade. The goats, the laughter, the smoke, the sun. Just wheels now, spinning gently through your dreams.